Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Ric Keller. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting, Forbidden Speech, the raw truth. I'm so grateful to have you here today. We're going to talk about your wonderful self-help book, but more than a self-help book is Chase the Bear, Little Things to Achieve Big Dreams. And you've achieved quite a few of your big dreams. You were a former congressman, served for 8 years in the U.S. House of Representatives, and you've written a wonderful book. You use humor a lot to really get through to people, and you told me that's one of the reasons you got into the Congress to begin with. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. But what even brought you to write your book?
So I didn't meet my dad until I was 14 years old, and sort of like meeting a stranger. And he handed me this little paperback book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I read it 6 times, and I really wasn't ready to call him dad for another 3 years. And about 3 years in, I was also ready to put the secret formula in this book to a test. So even though I was a very mediocre student in high school, I set a goal to graduate number 1 in my class with a 4.0, and I used the principles in that book, and it happened. And then I set a goal to get elected to the United States Congress. And even though I was a pretty big underdog, that happened. And then I'm older in life, and I thought, it would be really cool if I could write a book that will change young people's lives, just like that book changed my life. And so instead of talking about Andrew Carnegie and Henry Ford and others, I talk about modern day folks that they would know, like Jim Carrey and Dolly Parton and Steve Harvey and that sort of thing. So, and I try to make it pretty relatable and easy to read with stories that combine some humor in it.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that success, there is a general recipe that you find with the major players who have become majorly successful, not just in business, but in all areas, whether you're a ball player or you've gone into acting. They all have that major component or some major components that you see in Think and Grow Rich and that play out over and over again.
100% agree. In fact, right in the introduction of my book, I say this is not a book about politics. If you're getting a book because you want someone to persuade you to vote a certain way, this is not a book for you. This is a book about the success principles that apply whether you're in business, acting, politics, nonprofit, whatever.
I get you there. It completely makes sense. Now, what was the biggest takeaway for you on your journey? Because that's really something to meet your dad for the first time. Was that a pivotal moment that kind of changed your life and moved you towards success? Is that moment?
It was a really important moment for me because I didn't have a big start in life. I was fired from Wendy's in high school, and the manager said, and it's a quote, "You don't have what it takes to make it in fast food." And I was flipping the burgers too slow. And so what do you do when you're told as a kid that you're not even good enough for fast food? I really only had one option. I had to run for Congress. That's my fit there. And so I ran for Congress, and I was a huge underdog. I didn't have any rich friends or political connections. And 6 months in, I was losing in the polls by 27 points. Out fundraised 400,000 to 100,000. And the leader of my own party asked me to drop out. And I wrote a goal, and I used the principles that I talk about in my book and Think and Grow Rich, saying, okay, the leader has 400,000. I will have 400,000 by X date. And I read that goal every morning and every night, and I put a copy of it in my wallet. And a few weeks later, I was invited to give a 5-minute speech in Washington out of the blue. And it was a group of CEOs who got together, who decided to put some big money into a handful of congressional races. It was essentially American Idol for politicians. They looked across the country. They picked 16 finalists. I was the last one picked. I flew up there, and I get there. I'm in the back room. I'm the last one to talk. And everybody in front of me is spectacular. Not good, spectacular. Like Mike Pence was one of my opponents, and Jeff Flake, famous people, and they were all serious and talking about Laffer curves and marginal income tax rates, and nobody was light. And so I went up there, and I was just myself. And I said, guys, I have been in the back of the room waiting for 3 hours, listening to all this. And I feel like Elizabeth Taylor's 7th husband on his honeymoon night. I know what I'm supposed to do, but at this point, I don't know how to make it interesting.
Mm.
And that room erupted and it made me relax. And I spoke passionately without notes. And that little joke changed my life. They ranked me number one in the
Mm.
country. They sent me $400,000, the exact amount of my goal. And a few months later, against all odds, I won a seat in the United States Congress.
Wow. Now that does not speak to what it, to staying these principles to reaching your goals. It's interesting. You said something very interesting that when that person at the fast food chain said, "You're not even good enough for fast food." I remember my very first job was working in mailrooms across New York City in different mailrooms. They had me as a mailroom floater. So I didn't even have one mailroom. I had a bunch of mailrooms. They just float me out to, "Today you're going here." And I had said after 3 years, I had pretty much had enough of this mailroom stuff. Please send me into the corporate arena. I'd like to actually do some entry of bills, data entry, just something to get me out of the mailroom area. And they laughed me out of their office. "Get out of here, please." And I'm like, but what's interesting? These are the pivotal moments that get you going, okay, no, not okay.
Yeah.
No. And it's actually a blessing in disguise. At the moment you're going through it, like Think and Grow Rich mentioned, sometimes the misfortunes are where your greatest opportunities lie. And that was my greatest opportunity to say, nope, no more. We're going to make something happen. And so I love that you shared that. And another important thing I'm picking up from you, Rick, is that you went with authenticity. None of these fancy spreadsheets. Here's what we need to fix around. Here's who I am. I care about this country. I want to do something for it. Boom, this is what I got. That speaks to people.
It does, and and that was one of the reasons I gave a TEDx talk called the power of self-deprecating humor, because it's underutilized, this authenticity and self-deprecating humor, and there's a reason it's underutilized. We have been told since we were little kids to present this perfect image to the outside world. Fake it till you make it. Put your best foot forward. Never let them see you sweat. The truth, in my humble opinion, is exactly the opposite of that. The truth is we connect with people by being vulnerable and authentic and real. And it takes self-confidence to use self-deprecating humor, because what you're essentially saying is, look, I know that I'm flawed, but I also know I'm a good person. I believe in myself, and you should believe in me too. And people connect that. They get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, some people might listen in, including myself. I'm not really good at humor. And if I come across funny, sometimes it's completely, totally by accident. But whatever your natural, authentic self is, instead of putting on, as you say, that fake it till you make it or pretending to be something you're not, just coming out as, here's who I am. Here's what I have to offer, and being confident about that.
Absolutely. And humor is a two-way street. It's not enough just to have someone tell a joke. We need someone to laugh at it, and everybody can laugh and take it in. And the thing that I love about self-deprecating humor, especially for business people and CEO types, is that it's safe. It's safe. If it goes wrong and it flies flat, fine. You're the target.
Yeah.
And what the studies show in terms of CEOs is that it's really powerful, even more powerful than when a politician uses it, because it minimizes the status differences between employees and the business leaders. And so there was a very clever business professor out in Seattle University, and she did this experiment. And what she did is she had the CEO introduce a new employee to the group and did it 3 different ways. First time, self-deprecating humor. He said, "I'm so glad Pat joined our team despite knowing everything about me." And second time, negative humor. "I'm so glad Pat joined our team despite knowing everything about you." And third time, no humor. "I'm so glad Pat joined our team." And what the studies found is people thought that the person who used self-deprecating humor had better leadership skills, more likable, and more trustworthy. And it's because it minimized the status differences. And so I like it, whether you're funny or not. Just being your authentic self is a pretty cool way to go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One thing I find frustrating in my many years in corporate America was being in certain companies where there was this kind of the senior level, we're up here, you're down there, don't speak. And, that doesn't really give you much as an employee to come in and give your all if you don't really feel that you're valued, that your opinions or your work or your skills or value your talent. But if you come in and the leader self-deprecates a bit, but you see, okay, they respect me, that they don't think they're far above me, that they realize that they are human and they make mistakes sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we've seen that like with our most successful leaders, like Abe Lincoln, when he was
Mm.
running for office, and you don't get any more successful than him.
Yeah.
His opponent said, "You're two-faced." And he said, "If I had two faces, do you think this is the one I'd be wearing?" And now that face is on Mount Rushmore, right? And is best president of all time. And Reagan was great at humor. JFK was
Oh,
great at humor.
yes.
Obama, people on both sides, and
Yeah.
it has taken these leaders and helped elevate them into a position where they can make a big difference on other things.
Mm, absolutely. Well, I love using humor. What have you found through your journey that you were able to also apply in your book? We don't want to give them all the juicy details, but say maybe the one top tip besides humor that you learned in the realm of business.
The number one thing in life, if I could change every person and have them do this, would be
Mm,
this:
mm,
use your gifts. Use what is naturally given to you. And your gift is the thing you do the absolute best with
mhm,
the least amount of effort. It's the thing that you're very good at and other people aren't, but it
mm,
comes easy to you. And when you're doing this thing, you start off and you're doing it, you feel like about a 6, and then 45 minutes later, you feel like a 10, and you feel like time is going by. You
mm.
would do this thing for free. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And it's
Yeah.
my view that if you use your gifts for the greater good, you
Mm,
might stumble, but you will never fail on a permanent basis.
mm. You know, I love that you say that. And what's interesting, I many years ago was working as a claims person, and you think, oh my gosh, that's so outside the realm of where my gift was. I realized at the time, which was really communication and connection with others. And you know what's interesting is that I ended up taking my gift and using it for that job, because a lot of people listening will be like, well, I just do this or I just do that. Well, in many cases, maybe the vision you have for using your gift is not where you're at the moment, but there can be ways to use your gifts and talents and skills today wherever you're at. And in that case, I was able to use my communication skills to help me with that job.
I couldn't even agree 1,000% more than what you just said. And I'll give you one example that I talk about in the book. Steve Harvey, who most of us know him from Family Feud, right?
Mhm.
Well, he was one of the original kings of comedy. So he starts out his career in his late 20s, and he's using his gift, his humor and inspiration as a comedian, right? And then he becomes a talk show host, and he's using it there. And then he becomes a game show host
Mhm.
and a radio show host. And now the most impressive use is he goes around giving commencement speeches that are mind-blowingly good,
Mhm.
right? And they're all three very different roles: the inspirational speech, the television host, the stand-up comedian. But in each one, the common denominator is he's using his gifts, you know?
Mhm.
And I don't care who you are. Albert Einstein has a PhD in physics, Nobel Prize winner. If he had decided, instead of being a physicist, to be a rodeo cowboy and try to be riding bulls, he would be E equals MC squared on his butt in less than 8 seconds. You have got to stay in your lane.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so important. And I love that we're going here, because anyone listening in feeling frustrated, because you maybe there's someone listening in who hasn't started maybe that business or vision they have. I was in my 20s feeling I wasn't in my vision, but wherever you're at, you can find ways to use your gifts and talents in your job, at home. There's many different applications. So, but I don't want us to leave today without everyone finding out how they can get their very own copy and find out more about you. How can they do that?
So rickeller.net is my website, and you can get my book there. You can also get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any places books are sold. I'm told that Amazon's delivering like overnight now, so that's been a pretty
Yes.
popular source. But it's called Chase the Bears: Little Things to Achieve Big Dreams. And I'm so excited because this is my first book that I've ever wrote. And on the day it was released, it hit #1, became a #1 Amazon bestseller for that day. So
Wow.
I'm really excited. I think the book is going to really help people. It says essentially what you just said. It's never too late. Colonel Sanders opened up his first KFC when he was 62 years old. And so
Whoa.
I hope people are inspired to read this book. The thing that makes it different is, instead of just telling you the success stories, it gives you the how-to formula, how to apply the success formula that you can use your gifts every day and achieve success.
I love that, Rick, because I hear from a lot of people, just give me the recipe. What's the recipe to follow? Well, here's the recipe. And before we leave, why Chase the Bear? Why did you use that title?
So I'm sitting, drinking coffee, reading the newspaper with my wife, and we look outside the window, and a family of bears runs right by us. And we're about a mile or two away from the woods, and we've never seen it before. And so without thinking or even talking to each other, we jump up and go chase the bears, she and I. She's a smart girl, Harvard MBA, and we're chasing these bears because we want to extend this experience and especially see the cubs. And a bear, a Florida black bear, can run 35 miles an hour, usually very harmless. An Olympic sprinter, only 28. Whoa. So they don't mess with you unless you mess with them and you chase them or try to, do something with their cubs. And I said to Lori afterwards, I said, that was nuts, Lori. I said, if that mama bear would have turned around, she could have got us. And as the smoke was clearing and we digested what happened, I said, oh my goodness. I said, what just happened is a metaphor in life, Lori, because most people are content to stay inside, play it safe, look outside their window as life passes them by, and eventually the clock runs out. And some people go for it. They chase the dream. They chase the bears. And Lori said, Rick, that's the name of your book. Let's call it Chase the Bears.
Awesome. I love that story. Well, everyone, go chase your bears. Don't sit there today and let it pass you by, because you don't know when your last day on this planet is. Tomorrow's never promised, but let's make the most of it. Thank you so much, Rick, for coming to Savvy Broadcasting today.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
You betcha.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.